Every year in the UK, 40,000 people go bankrupt. Now, if you're faced with overwhelming debts and no means of repaying them, bankruptcy can seem like the only option. But remember, it comes at a price. It'll cost you your assets, your credit rating and your reputation. But for many people, bankruptcy offers the chance of a fresh new start, which is all very well. But if you get back into debt again, the financial future looks very bleak.
Today, one man with a history of big debts and big spending, who's already gone bankrupt once, faces losing everything all over again when the bailiff takes action against him.
Richard, hi, I'm here from the bailiff's office.
He'll find out what 20 years of poor money management means for him.
I need that for work.
And his stepdaughter, when the few treasured possessions he has left are taken away.
What you have to show for your life is now in the back of a van.
We'll show him that the little he has would go nowhere near paying off his enormous debts.
It seems such a waste.
And confront him with the harsh realities of his overspending.
A lot of money to lose in one hit.
Then we'll give him the financial advice he needs to face the future.
I think there's a realistic chance that we can certainly stop action being taken against Richard.
And face his family.
This is a man who desperately needs help in tackling his debts, so we're here to give him a second and final chance to beat the bailiff.
42-year-old Richard Gibbs first ran into serious money troubles 15 years ago. He declared himself bankrupt in order to write off his debts. He now runs a portrait photography business, as well as working full-time for a car leasing firm. But his money troubles are bigger than ever. Despite the fresh start following bankruptcy, he never changed the spending habits that got him into trouble in the first place. And, unsurprisingly, he's driven himself back into serious debt. Since he split up from his wife last year, things have gone from bad to worse. He now lives alone in a rented flat, struggling to make ends meet, with the demands from his creditors piling up daily. Richard's stepdaughter Zoe, whom he's known since she was 4, calls round when she can to offer moral support, but she thinks Richard needs a major wake-up call if he's ever going to learn how to manage his money and avoid legal action again.
So if you've been in debt before, hit rock bottom and have never quite recovered, what does the financial future hold? Well, the answer is not a lot. It's high time that Richard finally learnt his lesson before he loses what little he has left.
Come on in.
So what do you think your debts stand at the moment?
I would say probably somewhere in the region of 35 to 40,000, something like that.
And how realistic is it for you at the moment to actually tackle those debts?
Fairly unrealistic, to be honest. You know, they seem to be spiralling down.
How does that sort of figure feel to you, Zoe?
It's almost incomprehensible, to be honest. I can't understand how he's managed to get that far in, really.
But I understand that's not the first time that this has happened to you in your life.
I did go through bankruptcy back in the late 80s. I'd been working in the estate agency business, had a good job, good money. I woke up one morning, decided that I didn't want to do that anymore, and so I decided to start my own business up, which I did for 2 years, couldn't make ends meet, and hence the bankruptcy.
How did you struggle out of the bankruptcy scenario that you were in at that point?
Basically, my wife took over the business until I was discharged from the bankruptcy. The business then picked up and, things were reasonably okay.
What happened at the next point to get you to the situation you're in today?
The big one for me was when me and Tracy, my wife, separated and I took on this place. It's a big shock to the system. When you haven't got money, you're living on your own. A situation which I hadn't faced before.
And do you worry about the situation? Has it any effect on your health at all?
I didn't initially think so. I went to the doctors 2-3 weeks ago and he said, while you're here, we'll take your blood pressure. He was a little bit horrified at how high it was and he put that down to the stress. And I said, well, I don't feel stressed. And he said, oh no, it would sort of be subconscious. You'll still be stressed even if you don't feel it.
So Zoe, what would you like to see happen? What, in an ideal world, would you like Richard's scenario to be?
Obviously, I'd like him to be out of the debt, but the main thing is actually learning money management. This has happened before, and he's here again, and he really, really needs to sort that out.
I'd be the first to put my hand up and say I'm hopeless at managing money. Always have been.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's if the money's there, it's there to be spent. I suppose is my attitude.
And if it's not there, you'll find it.
Well, I often hear people say, if the money's there, we'll spend it. The problem is there's a difference between that and not having the money and still spending it.
That's right.
And that seems to me something that's been a huge problem here, really.
Yes.
OK, well, why don't we have a look round the flat, OK, and see where some of the money might have been spent, yeah?
Right.
Obviously, this is a studio as well as your main
That's
sitting
right,
room.
yes.
This equipment must have cost some money. Let's start with this. How much was that?
I think the lamps were probably about 350 each, something like that.
What about the backdrops?
£800,
Gosh,
yeah.
that's a lot, isn't it? And obviously, camera kit.
About £1,500, something like that. I mean, there's photographic mounts and things like that, £600 under there.
What about things like the paintings?
I bought those a good few years ago now. I think I probably paid for the two of them £350, £400.
Let's say 350. What about all the CDs?
Probably somewhere in the region of £1,000, something like that.
What's that?
Oh, that's just some old photos that I was sorting out. We used to have a parrot, Sid the Parrot. We had him for about 15, 16 years, something like that, didn't we? Something like that.
Had to have him adopted.
Did you actually buy him, though?
Yes, yeah, we paid just under £1,000 for him.
You paid £1,000 for a parrot?
Yep.
Typical of Richard. Rather than spend £20 on a kitten or something, he'll pay £1,000 for a parrot.
Right, that's a lot of money. Should we move swiftly on before I start getting a hot flush? OK, so what have we got in here, then?
A mess. Excuse the state of the place, Lorne. This is where I tend to live.
That's all right.
It doubles up as the office. You've got the computer equipment there.
So what are we talking about there?
About £1,600.
What about these photo albums?
250, 300 maybe.
Into fishing, are we?
Used to be. I haven't been for years. 150, 200, something like that.
OK, shall we have a look in the bedroom? Oh, I say, this is very smart and sophisticated, isn't it? Tell me, what sort of money are we talking about that you might have spent here? I can see some sports stuff down there.
Squash rackets, I think there's probably a couple down there, about £100 a time.
What about clothes?
Not a huge amount. A few jackets, shirts.
So how much would you estimate you've spent on clothes?
Over what sort of time period?
Well, shall we say since your last bankruptcy?
I would say 400, 500, something like that.
OK, he probably personally hasn't bought that much, but I know my mum would have spent a lot more on him, so yeah, OK, probably a fair estimate.
That's a nice big kitchen, isn't it? That's a nice picture. Did you pay for that?
£60, £70, something like that.
OK, and what about the table and chairs?
No, not mine.
What about the fridge?
Again, that comes with it. It's not the main fridge, that's obviously down there.
Which has never got anything in it either, because you don't eat properly, do you?
Oh, right.
So that's about the extent of Richard's life.
Is there anything else that we need to look at, Zoe?
Car.
OK, so this is your car, is it?
That's right, Lorne, yes.
And how much did it cost you?
I paid, I think it was about £1,500 for it. I intended to use it for weddings. It seemed a bargain at the time.
Intended is a good word, because I don't think you've ever used it, have you?
No, I got as far as making a personalised plate to put on it.
Your spending priorities are very strange, aren't they, Richard? Well, altogether, from what we've established so far, we've got £10,320 worth of purchases. All right? Now, you think you're around £35,000 worth in debt, yeah?
Yes.
So we're kind of missing around £25,000 somewhere, aren't we?
That's true, yes.
Yeah. So I think the only way we're going to track that down is to go through all your paperwork. OK, so back in the house. It's a boy-toy thing, isn't it?
Jamie Waller is a bailiff with over 8 years' experience. He sees goods in order to recover debts from literally thousands of homes, and these days he's knocking on more doors than ever. If legal action by a creditor has been ignored, a bailiff can be appointed either by the magistrates' court or the county court, depending on the type of debt. His first step is to deliver a letter requesting immediate repayment. If there's no reply, next time he'll be meeting Richard face to face. You'd have thought that Richard would have learnt his lesson by being bankrupt once before, but he still managed to rack up an estimated £35,000 of debt. Just what has he been playing at? We're ploughing through his mountain of paperwork to get a handle on his spending, and it's not looking good.
Right, I'm not quite sure where to start here, I have to say. Let's start with the business.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
These are all creditors. So the accountancy bill here of about £1,588.
Yes.
And have you paid the Inland Revenue?
No, I mean, I don't know how much I owe them, if anything.
But they are two quite important bills to pay, really. I mean, Inland Revenue because they can send you to prison.
Yes.
And the accountants because you need to know how much to pay the Inland Revenue. I'm now not convinced that the business is worthwhile.
The business itself is making the money. It's just I'm
No,
spending.
it's not. No, the business is not making money. And you can't afford to pay the Inland Revenue and your accountancy bill. That business is not making money. Is this a loan?
No, that was for something I bought before I moved here, actually. I'd forgotten all about it.
Well, now, you've got a balance on the account of £129, court costs are £27, solicitors cost are £50, so your total bill is £206. You've already been threatened with court proceedings by a telephone company. So your original phone bill was for £43, and now you're facing £127.98 in terms of the costs. And this will be because you haven't replied to them.
Quite probably, yeah.
I mean, no wonder your debts are what they are if you're not actually going to speak to your creditors. Credit cards, its closing balance is £895. So have you phoned them to tell them that you cannot pay the direct debit that is due?
No.
If you'd made one call, I suspect they would have suspended those charges.
You could be right.
It's your responsibility to get into contact with them.
Have you not had threats to the bailiff yet? Well, you're going to now. This is the council tax reminder. It actually says that because they haven't heard from you effectively, they now want you to pay the whole lot in one hit, £871. And you've got to pay that in 14 days. I mean, how do you feel about this, Zoe?
It would be a lot easier if you actually spoke to people, but just in the way that he's reacting to you at the moment, he's just, suppose, yeah. Wake up.
I think it's just the way I am that I come across a bit casual. It doesn't mean that I am casual about these things. I'm the first to put my hand up, so I'm useless at managing money.
You knew that many years ago when you went bankrupt the first time. Do you know how much debt you've got here?
I reckoned between 35 and 40,000.
Yeah, it's £42,800 worth of debt. Yeah. Of all the people that I've dealt with, I'm surprised you haven't had the bailiffs round already.
As you say, it's only a matter of time before that's likely to happen.
Yeah.
Richard's estimated his debt stood at £35,000, but the true total is far more, nearly £43,000 owed across the board to business and personal creditors, the council and the taxman. It's hardly surprising that Richard's stepdaughter Zoe is at the end of her tether. And with court action pending, Richard's closer than ever to meeting the bailiff for real. If the bailiff has delivered his warning letter and received no reply, then the next step is a visit in person to request payment from the debtor or face a repossession.
Yes, mate. Richard, hi. I'm here from the bailiff's office.
What about?
Well, I think you know what it's about, don't you? Shall we go through there and discuss it?
Oh.
Well, let's go through there. I'm not going to stand on your doorway and argue with you, so let's go through.
Yeah, I've got much to say, but...
Okay, Richard, if I explain to you what I'm here to do today, I'm here to make a levy today, which means I'm going to write out a list of the items that we intend to remove if you don't settle your outstanding monies owed to your creditors, okay?
Jamie takes a list of everything of value in Richard's home, including his precious photographic equipment.
Just clothes.
Okay. Okay, so you understand what's happened here today, yes? I've levied on your items here, which means that you cannot dispose of them. They now belong to us for the time being. You've got 7 days. Hopefully you get it sorted and you never see me again. If you don't, then the likelihood is you will, because I'll be back to remove the goods. If you read the back of that, it will tell you all your legal rights and exactly what's happened today, and obviously there's our contact telephone number if you have any problems.
Despite going bankrupt 15 years ago, Richard never truly got his life back on track. his frankly appalling money management plunged him further into debt than ever before, and he currently owes a whopping £42,800. Richard's stepdaughter Zoe is desperate to get Richard to stop a lifetime of outrageous spending. So we're about to send in the bailiff to give Richard the wake-up call he so badly seems to need.
Now, Richard, despite having been down the bankruptcy road once before, you've never actually had a visit from the bailiffs, have you?
No, that's right.
What do you think you're going to learn from the bailiffs actually coming in?
Not to do it again.
We'll see.
See, you seem really frustrated about all of this to me. Do you think this is going to make a difference to him at last?
I hope so. He really needs it.
We do need this to be the final wake-up call for you, Richard. So I'm just going to let you go back in there and get what you need, lock up, and I'll meet you in the observation van. And I'm going to go and have a chat with the bailiff now,
Okay.
all right? So, Jamie, now Richard hasn't got a lot of stuff to show for his spending, but he is a photographer in his spare time, and that is a business as such. How do you stand in terms of taking all his photographic equipment?
It's all going to go, as far as I'm concerned. He has a full-time job that he does during the week, so he doesn't need it to make his living. He should be coming with us.
Well, this particular guy has already been bankrupt once,
So I have.
and his stepdaughter, bless her, is trying really hard to make him wake up and smell the roses.
I'm sure we can do that.
Well, I'll let you go on and get on with the job then.
Take care.
In the flat, we've positioned cameras in every room so Richard and his stepdaughter Zoe can watch every detail of the bailiff in action. In our observation van, they prepare to see Richard's home invaded.
Right, OK, you ready for this then?
As I'll ever be.
Right, let's see what happens. So that's the bailiff van. Is it what you were expecting?
I suppose so, yes.
Behind the bailiff van is the locksmith. So the bailiff has called the locksmith in to gain access. And this is the recovery lorry.
Okay, Chris, if you want to deal with these guys, I'm going to take the locksmith in.
Okay.
Yep, you okay?
Yeah.
There you go, this is the one. It's nice and simple, isn't it?
Well, that doesn't take long, does it? And they're straight in.
You always think your place is secure.
Just get the van turned around, backs in there, and open all the doors up.
Now, do you know many people in the close?
No.
They'll certainly know that's your car, that it's a classic car.
Yes, I would think that they've seen me getting in and out of it a few times.
So what do you think they're going to make of seeing your car being taken away by bailiffs?
I don't know. I'm not really bothered about that.
You've not got an element of pride almost.
Not for people I don't know. No.
That's lovely. Cheers, mate. Take care. All right, let's go.
Where's that gone?
Just hope they take care with it.
Well, it doesn't really matter because obviously in the real world this will be going to auction, you'll never see it again anyway. Now the bailiffs have gained entry to your flat now and they're just going to go through and take whatever's on the inventory, starting by the looks of it with your photographic equipment.
Okay, let's start with the expensive equipment. So let's do this cameras.
I need that for work. They're basically taking away the income.
You've got to be able to prove that. And from what I've seen of your limited company, you're not going to be able to prove that at all. If you could prove that the photography business was a viable business that was bringing in more money, then the bailiffs would leave you the tools of the trade.
And all the time you're spending the profits before you've paid your bills,
Yes,
it's not
but
proving anything.
I might be spending it, yes, but the business
This is what I'm up against all the
making
time.
money.
No.
You're not going to get the business anymore anyway. When word of mouth gets round, people won't want to book you.
No, I mean, that's fine.
How can you be so blasé about everything?
Look, the bailiff's being questioned now by neighbours.
Only so much I can discuss with you, but we're here legally.
Not paid his bills, or
Well, we're here legally. That's all I can say really at this stage.
I mean, the good thing is obviously the neighbours are bothered enough to realise that there's two strange men taking stuff out of your flat.
Yes,
Which is a
yes.
good thing in case of burglary. However, it also means that basically everyone's going to know exactly what's been going on.
Yes.
he's only been in here a couple of months.
Really?
3 months.
That's going to be around the entire close now.
We'll leave it secure. Take care.
just can't comprehend that you're not bothered. I really can't. Your computer.
I can no longer do any photography because I can't size prints. I can't take them in the first place.
What about the things like the fishing tackle going? Does that bother you at all?
I haven't been fishing for years, so no, and it's probably pretty worthless now.
So the computer, the pictures, anything personal to you, and particularly all the photography equipment, I don't think there's a lot left, is there?
Not a lot, no. That'll be it. What you have to show for your life is now in the back of a van.
Okay, Chris, you can get those 2 items in, I'll just secure them.
It's quite uncomfortable, someone entering your personal space and taking everything.
So there it all goes, off to the warehouse.
It's a bit like being burgled, I would think. Not that I've ever been burgled, but I imagine that's what it will feel like.
It's worse sitting there watching it almost, because there's nothing that you can do about it, but you know it's happening.
Well, do you want to go and have a look?
Not something I'm looking forward to, but let's do it.
Come on in.
Richard's rented home wasn't exactly packed with possessions, and it didn't take the bailiffs long to remove the few valuables he did have, his photographic equipment and his car. Now Richard's about to see the result of the repossession firsthand.
And it was a bit of a mess before, but it's more of a mess now, isn't it?
Yes. The same mess with more space, isn't it?
It's just really weird. It's like, I know it's happening, but for the reality of it, it's just...
Do you want to carry on?
I think so.
Obviously, the bailiff can't take half this stuff because you're in rented accommodation. It doesn't actually personally belong to you. So fortunately, you've still got a bed.
That's true.
I'm not sure that the lounge is so comfortable. All your photography equipment's gone.
You see the stuff going out, but you don't realise the impact actually on the room.
In a way, I wish some of it wasn't rented. You've still got a sofa to sit on tonight, a bed to sleep in. If they were yours, you might not have. Do you realise that?
I suppose.
So he's not quite right. The bailiff would leave a bed, but not much else.
It's really hard.
How do you feel about the fact that, you know, you and Zoe obviously have a close relationship, but that she's having to go through this because of what you've done?
It's probably one of the most awkward parts, you know, it's the guilt. It's like your health, isn't it? If you're ill, you tend not to tell people because you don't want to upset them, when perhaps you should.
Now, tomorrow you'll have your chance to find out what value there is in the items the bailiff has taken, should they go to auction, and obviously to have a chat with the bailiff himself, OK? Then we'll get you back on the right road in terms of money management, rather than debt crisis, I think, don't you?
It's about time, Lorne, isn't it?
Are you OK, Zoe?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? All right, well, look, this is as bad as it gets, and it'll get a lot better tomorrow, so I'll see you in the morning, all right?
Yeah, thanks, Lorne.
All right.
All of Richard's goods seized by the bailiff have been stored overnight in a nearby warehouse awaiting valuation. It's been an upsetting day for Richard and Zoe. We left Richard to spend the night in his home alone and gave him a video camera to record his thoughts.
Perhaps to an extent, the money side isn't everything, but obviously you've got to keep a roof over your head. It brings home the fact that what have you to show for 40 odd years of life, you know. Hopefully I'll have a good night's skip. I always have a good night's skip. Wake up refreshed tomorrow. Start of a new day. Start of a new life, hopefully. get myself sorted.
Early next morning, Zoe calls for Richard, and together they set off for the warehouse, where we hope to sort out Richard's debt problems once and for all.
Richard's been struggling with money issues for the last 20 years. Now, he's already been made bankrupt once, but that didn't stop him acquiring another £42,000 worth of debt. And with those sort of money problems, he's heading for a showdown with the bailiff.
Without the means to pay off his mounting debts, Richard could do nothing but sit and watch as the bailiffs legally entered his home and took possession of the few goods he owned. More upsetting still, he saw the impact that his casual attitude to money had on his stepdaughter Zoe.
Now Richard's going to get his chance to confront the man who came into his home and took the very few possessions he had left. Right, so you ready to meet the bailiff?
I guess as ready as I'll ever be, though.
So this is Jamie Waller, the bailiff, who came in with the locksmith and took everything that we've got here.
Morning, guys.
Hiya.
Not a lot there, really, is there?
Yep, it certainly doesn't look it when it's here.
I can understand spare cameras, lenses, things like that being taken, but you would expect at least one camera to be left so that you can continue any outstanding work.
As far as I'm concerned, it's not a business. You have a full-time job, so it's not required for you to make your income. So that's why it would still be removed. It wouldn't be considered as a tool of the trade.
How would you feel if I was doing your wedding photos and didn't turn up because my gear had been taken?
Maybe it's your responsibility to make sure that a replacement turns up for you.
Obviously, how do I pay for this replacement to turn up?
You haven't paid for much in the past, so I guess you don't.
There should be some way out for those poor people who are now not going to get their wedding photo.
I'd worry a little bit less about them and more about your own situation, to be quite honest with you.
It's his fantasy world, though, isn't it?
What have you got to say about that?
I think everybody who gets in this position believes that there's a turning point round the corner. You're then faced with the reality that that corner isn't getting any closer.
Right, well, I think the next thing to do is, given that there's not very much here anyway, we'll see what it might make at auction.
Steve Zeelander is an auctioneer specialising in the sale of repossessed goods and runs his own very busy auction house. We want Richard to get an idea of how much his belongings might fetch at auction. Could he raise enough money to even make a dent in that £42,000 debt? So, Richard, this is Steve, our auctioneer.
Hi, hello, Steve.
He's very used to seeing all sorts of things coming through his auction room. A lot of stuff here today.
Well, no is the answer. It's very interesting, but there's not a lot there. And he's got some lamps here. Second-hand photography stuff. Some makes good money, some doesn't. But in this condition and the way it is, you may be talking, I don't know, £30 a pair.
How much did they cost you new, Richard?
About £3.50 each, I think, something like that.
You've got a small portable hi-fi system, maybe £5.
Yep.
The VCR, we wouldn't even sell that. You've got a couple of squash rackets.
Yeah, it's broken or needs restoring.
Well, yeah, I did notice that. I had a look at that before. A couple of pounds. You've got a computer, and that really is out of the arc. No one's going to buy it. It won't pass its electrical test. You've got some CDs, crack cases, probably the whole lot, maybe a £5. You've also got some fishing gear. Well, I don't think that's been used for a long, long time.
Yeah, 25 years.
Well, there we go. In that condition, probably nothing, actually. You've got a couple of digi cameras here. There's two different lenses on them. They're not making as much as they were when they first came out. Probably 150 on the pair. The pictures at the back and the screens and the tripods, maybe £10, £20 a lot. And I've had a look at the car. It's in very nice condition, but it is on an H plate. It hasn't got leather. People that buy these and collect these want it top of the range, and that isn't a top of the range one. And you maybe have, say, £400 on this one because the bodywork is nice.
So what are we looking at in terms of the overall value?
With the car, on a good day, maybe 600. But time you take the cost of the bailiff's cost, which is going to be £450, plus the lifting of a car, which is probably another £150, that's £600, plus our costs, which is going to be another couple £100 on top of that. You've got a sort of probably a total of £800 coming out of that sort of money.
Yeah.
Not good, is it?
No, it seems such a waste.
Well, that's life in your situation, I'm afraid.
Richard spent around £10,000 on his few possessions. But Steve reckons the value of Richard's items at auction will barely dent his debt. Time to get real. Everything taken from Richard is now returned to his flat. We want to help Richard wake up to his spending mistakes of the past and show him how to shake off those debts for good. So we've been delving into his lifestyle to try and understand the habits that got him into debt in the first place.
Let's see some of the huge financial mistakes you've been making that have totted up to £42,000 worth of debt, shall we? Okay. Starting with cars. What is it about you and cars?
I just like them, I guess.
So what are you doing here then?
Just looking to acquire another vehicle.
And you go in and pay cash for this, do you?
No, I lease them.
You lease them?
Yes.
And then what, you just chop them in on a regular basis?
Yes. I started leasing from the company I work with now. I used to lease sort of top-of-the-range vehicles. Obviously, as times got harder, I had to get the lease payments down. As a result, took on smaller vehicles. But I do still owe the company about £8,000.
He's just very fortunate that he's very good friends with the managing director. I knew he owed money to the company and they took it out of his salary, but he never really told me how much.
I wasn't dishonest, it's just you never asked.
That's not the point.
That's not the point. OK, well, let's have a look now at your other hobby or pastime. Squash, great game this. I like going with squash myself. Great stress reliever. And you would think not very expensive. So how often would you say you go and play squash a week?
2-3 times a week, no more than that.
And that's it, so you just go play squash and go home again?
Obviously you've got to put that fluid back in, shall we say? In
the form of the sports bar afterwards. Now you're over generous because you often offer to pay for a round. I estimate you spend £2,000 a year just in after game drinking.
I suppose when you look at it like that, you know, it does bring it home to you, doesn't it?
Now the other area of indulgence is holidays. So where's this that you went on holiday to?
That one was the Seychelles.
Seychelles.
Was it a good trip?
The actual experience was amazing. It was one that I'm very, very thankful to have gone through. But I would have rather missed out looking at the way he is now.
The sort of holidays that you've been paying for, you're not going to get much change out of, what, £2,500–3,000 a time?
Just a lot more than that in some circumstances.
So where has that money come from to pay for those holidays?
On a card, or if I've had a large job come in.
But more often than not, it's been put on the card?
Yes, quite often.
So really, you've been taking holidays that you can't actually afford? You've been able to afford them only through credit? Looking back now, because of my change in circumstances, yes.
It's easy to see how Richard was made bankrupt once before. As if his love for cars and holidays isn't problem enough, his generosity has also landed him in trouble. But his unrealistic attitude doesn't stop there. We're about to confront him with the biggest examples of how he wasted money since his last bankruptcy.
Now, you like surprises, don't you?
Depends what it is.
Well, you've been very generous in the past with surprises, so have a look at this. Oh, look, it's air tickets. So where are we going then? Oh, we're going to the Maldives. How many of us? Oh, 3. So how much did that little trip cost, do you think?
£3,500.
£6,000 you spent on that particular holiday. A lot of money.
A lot of money.
What was it, a Christmas present or something?
Yeah, Christmas morning, my mum and myself opened an envelope which had a laminated holiday brochure page in it, saying this is where we're going.
Well, it must have been a wonderful surprise on Christmas morning.
It was.
It wasn't quite so good Boxing Day, actually, because we switched on the news to find the Maldives had been hit by a tsunami.
I was thinking your bank balance must have been hit like a tsunami and all with this. How did you pay for that?
I had the money at the time. I think I'd taken out a loan.
That's not having the money.
No.
Do you regret this sort of level of extravagance?
Yes, I mean, obviously, because of the position I'm in now.
OK, so the tickets stay firmly in the box. Have a look at this. So here we have a Lotus Elite. Similar to a Lotus Elite you once owned. Tell me about that.
I did indeed. I owned it a few years ago now. The subframe went on it. I lost quite a bit of money on it.
Run that by me again. It basically collapsed. And how much money did you lose, do you know?
7,000, something like that.
Spot on. A lot of money to lose in one hit.
Indeed.
Oh dear.
Not getting through to him, are we?
No, not really, no. Have a look at this. So you've been generous to friends and family. You've been generous to yourself. You've also been very generous, actually, to the financial institutions.
They've had plenty of money from me.
They certainly have. Have you any idea how much they might have clawed back from you in terms of charges, fines, late penalties, interest? What do you think of that?
Bad news.
That is a lot of money to have just wasted. And you're still doing it now. I mean, we went through the bills that you've got. There's still a catalogue of fines and late penalties down there now. So you're just handing over this money. I mean, you know, if you work hard for your money, why are you handing it back to people?
As I said on numerous occasions, something I'm hopeless at is money management.
Well, fortunately for you, there is help at hand in the form of someone who is very good at money management.
John Fairhurst is a financial advisor specialising in debt counselling and money management. His company offers free advice and specialist help to thousands of debtors. Now that Richard's finally started to see the error of his ways, we're hoping professional advice will help him to get back on his feet. John's been looking into Richard's debt problems and thinks he may have a solution. But will it be one that Richard wants to hear?
It's not looking good, is it?
Well, it's not. The thing that's worrying is, forgetting your debts, you've got more going out than you've got coming in.
Right.
And I've got a little bit of good news, which is that we think you'll be able to get some housing benefit to help with your rent.
Okay.
That's going to give you a bit of extra cash each month, but you're still not really balancing your books. So the first thing to do is fix that. The next thing to do, and fairly urgently, is to have a look at the way in which your photography business has been handled. Going forward, you're not going to have the opportunity to run up more debts for photography supplies and things like that. You're going to have to deal effectively on a cash basis with that.
Okay.
Now, obviously, in Richard's case, he's already been made bankrupt once. How does that affect the way creditors deal with him now?
If Richard goes bankrupt again now, there is a risk under current bankruptcy legislation that Richard will be subject to something called a bankruptcy restriction order, which can extend the term of bankruptcy. I can't really see any of your creditors rushing to make you bankrupt, because if any of your creditors do make you bankrupt, they'll get nothing back. My advice to you in this case is that, first of all, you let us write to your creditors and explain the situation. I think there's a realistic chance that we can certainly stop action being taken against Richard. And there's a chance as well that we'll get some of this debt written off.
There's no easy way out of debt for Richard. Bankruptcy is an option, but not a good one. Creditors wouldn't see much, if anything, of the money that's owed to them. And if he chose to make himself bankrupt a second time, he'd face a bankruptcy restriction order. This means that besides losing all his assets, his credit status could be affected for up to 10 years. A better immediate option is to try and create some breathing space, where he stops avoiding his creditors, spends only what he has coming in, makes every effort to increase his income, and as part of that, makes sure he's getting all the benefits he's entitled to.
So the first step on the road to recovery is to buy Richard some time, not to do anything hastily.
Certainly don't do bankruptcy hastily.
No.
And start budgeting.
Sounds good advice.
Richard has to change his attitude for good if he's going to get himself solvent and stay that way. He's slipped back into debt since his last bankruptcy, and he simply can't afford to do it again. To help him keep his resolve, we're asking him to sign our debt pledge.
Right, well, here I have the debt pledge, okay? And I have brought Zoe here to help me because I think her and I are on the same wavelength, and I'm still not 100% convinced about you. The first point is to obviously seek other ways of raising your income to pay off your debt. The second thing is to communicate with the bank and creditors, and you know how much that has cost you. And I think perhaps most importantly, to stop being so overly generous with people.
It's something to aim for, isn't it?
Okay, well there you go then. Sign up, Richard.
Right.
Do you mean this?
Yes.
Are you sure though?
Yep.
There's no point in doing it otherwise, is there?
It's now signed.
There you go, Zoe.
It's not a problem.
I think you're very lucky, Richard, actually, that you've got somebody like Zoe around to help you, because she's doing it with all the right intention. And it's out of love and concern for you that she wants to see you back on your feet again. She called us in just in time for you to beat the bailiff.
Thank you.
Years of financial mismanagement has put Richard in seemingly endless debt. Slapdash business sense and thoughtless spending left him owing more than £42,000, with nothing to show for it and no way out, or so it seemed. We've given Richard a major reality check and the financial advice he desperately needed. So has it all been worthwhile?
So I know it's been a tough couple of days. I mean, I've been tough on you, the bailiff's been tough on you, Zoe's been tough on you, but do you think it's worked?
Oh, certainly.
What has been the best part of this exercise for you?
John saying that he can get things sorted, or, you know, we should be able to see light at the end of the tunnel, I think.
But you can only get things sorted in as much as you're prepared to help yourself.
Oh, yes, but I know that I'll do that.
Do you think you can, Zoe?
I've actually seen a change in him as we've been doing this. I definitely think there's going to be a positive outcome from this.
So, long term, where would you like to see yourself, Richard?
Standing on my own 2 feet, you know, and doing a lot better than I am at the moment.
Well, look, I wish you the very best of luck, and I don't think you can go far wrong if you listen to Zoe, and obviously John's advice, that's for sure.
Thank you for all your help.
Oh, that's right, you're more than welcome, because next time that I come back, hopefully it'll be to have some studio shots done or something, because I'm not going to come back on the financial side anymore, am I?
No.
Good. All right, bye.
Thanks, bye. Well done.
So after 20 years of struggling with his money issues, Richard, who's already been made bankrupt once, seems to have finally learnt his lesson. If he sticks to his debt pledge, then he can face the financial future without fear. So remember, there's no need to actually sink and drown in debt. You can always tackle the problems, no matter how late it may seem. And that way you can turn the tide and beat the bailiff.
Since we visited Richard last, he's been sticking to his debt pledge and finally started to take responsibility for his financial situation. So, how's it working out?
The last few weeks have been pretty tough, but we're getting there. So the biggest challenge for me at the moment is to make sure I keep this process going, to avoid bankruptcy again. It's always there as an option, but it's not one which I want to entertain at the moment.
I'm really proud of him, actually. He's been working really, really hard. Actually contacting people as well, which is the first time I've ever seen him do anything like that. So I'm, yeah, really, really proud of him. But still a little bit worried that he could slip. Time will tell, I suppose.
If you're in debt and want further information, you can go online to bbc.co.uk/lifestyle or call our action line on 08000 688 456. Lines are open 7 days a week from 7:30 in the morning until midnight, and all calls are free and confidential.